Welcome back to part 2. Keith, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Right, me again. It was wonderful to, I can't tell you how lovely it is to be here with you this afternoon. I'm really enjoying being with you. And a couple of things that I didn't mention. One was the books. Now, what happened was, it goes back to about 2013. I just finished a regression, and I'm going to try and do this and say this as quickly as I can. I finished a regression at Vivian's shop in Whitley Bay. It's when she had her Heaven and Earth shop in Whitley Bay. And I just finished, I'd gone to the till to put the money in the till, and the person had gone. And this lady walks in, and she starts talking to me about her holiday in June of that year, which was in a month's time. And she said, I'm going to Lourdes, I go to Lourdes every year, and I absolutely love going. And do you know, she said, whenever I go there, it feels like I'm going home. And of course, those words, going home, oh, does it? Right, yeah. So my ears pricked up, and I said, well, if you ever want to know, here's my card, you know. Now, 2 years later, so in 2015, she phones me and says, I'm ready to give it a try, to see if I've had a life in Lourdes, in France. And I say, oh, that's absolutely fine. Now, this is so interesting, and this is how I know that Spirit is with you all the time, and we must get rid of the fear. Let's get rid of the fear, because, you know, we've lived for eons, we're going to live for eons. This is just a tiny little part of our whole existence. And you know, we have lived so many lifetimes that have been such a struggle. They've been so difficult, very, very hard. If we've got through stuff, then we can get through it again in this lifetime. We can get through it again. Anyway, 2 weeks before she phoned me, I was again up in Darlington, and there was a lady. She was sat there, and she was in the higher realms by this time. She'd gone through her past life, and she was just sat there, eyes closed, tight shut, and suddenly her head turned like this to me. I was here, and she said, "I have a message for Keith. I'm being told he has to write a book, and it's got to be finished by this time next year." It's actually 5 years later, but anyway. And then she turned her head back this way and carried on with what she was talking about. Now, I had no idea what they really meant by that. Well, it must be all the different regressions that I've done and put them into a book, keep them happy upstairs. But she phoned me up 2 weeks after I'd received that message. And when we took her back into a past life, not only had she had the life in Lourdes, but she was the little girl Bernadette who saw the visions. So I said to her, you know, could we, I feel that, I've been told that I've got to write this book, so do you think I could, you know, I'm getting the feeling that this should be who it's about. And she said, yeah, so we went on to record 14 hours of her life. And all her story in her own words is there. And at times, you know, she could be quite cheeky, you know, it's quite interesting. And I would say something and she'd say, oh, no, silly man, you know, it's quite funny. And she was always hungry. You know, it explains that in the book about she was always hungry. And there's an extra thing in the back that I didn't know until the very last session that we did, when we were speaking to Bernadette from the higher realms, when she had left her body in the convent, which was really sad. And there's so much emotion there. I mean, I'm filling up now even just thinking about when I was writing it, I was filling up with some of the emotion. You know. Anyway, that's and then what happened with Joan of Arc was another amazing thing. So I sort of looked up and said, so what's next, you know, is that it? And again, a few weeks later, I was coming to the point where I needed a cover for the book, and I needed somebody to do a cover for me, and I thought, oh, I know, let's have a spiritual cover, and we'll have it so that when people see it, they will know whether they're spiritually attracted to it or not, you know. And so I contacted somebody, and who didn't really do it anymore, but did have some copies, and she said, oh, I'm being told I need a regression. So it was to do with the Bernadette book, why I phoned her, but when we had the regression, it turned out that she was the reincarnated soul of Joan of Arc. Mm. And again, and when we did this up at Vivian's shop at Heaven and Earth, and when we'd finished, Vivian said to her, so when was your birthday? Talking to the lady, and she said, oh, June the 6th. Sorry, January the 6th. And she said, I've just looked up on Google, Joan of Arc was born on that day as well. Now that doesn't mean anything, but it's interesting though, isn't it? It is interesting, isn't it? And again, we recorded about 14 hours of her life. And again, it's all in her own words, her own thoughts that were never written down originally, because, you know, a lot of was recorded from her trial in her own words, but you know, most of her life, and we've got her even when she was 5 years old, so it's really, really fascinating. So that's all I'll say about the books. If anybody did want one, hasn't got one, they're £10 each and 2 for £15. Okay. Right, now I wanted to, before we do any hypnosis, I just wanted to briefly mention 3 groups that I run during the week. The first one is on a Monday night, starts at 7 o'clock, and it's called the Ascension Group. Now the Ascension Group was set up a year ago, so we're in our 2nd year now. And the idea was, because we knew we were getting closer to our ascension time, then I felt that we could maybe do some work to help it move forward. That was the idea. So it's totally free, all these things are free, they don't cost anything. And what you do, you come along and we do it on Zoom, and we go into hypnosis and you connect to the higher realms, which we're going to do in a minute. And then the higher realms that are gathered there give you a mission to carry out, to do with helping with the ascension. Now, just to give you one very quick example, at one time there was a lady, and she came on board to do this, and is very regular, comes every Monday, when, you know, as often as she can anyway. And we don't ask you to come every week, so if you do come on, you know, if you're not able to come for 2 or 3 weeks, that's fine, just join us the 4th week, you know, just join in when you can. So there's no limit to how many, it's just a small group. She, in a past life, she came to a past life a couple of years beforehand, and she, turns out, was a galactic commissioner in a past life. And her job was to go around our galaxy and to help smooth out any issues with any particular galactic races, which was quite an amazing job. And recently, in the last 3 or 4 months, she was told that when the disclosure happens, they want her to be part of the humans on the ground that are going to help with this disclosure when it finally happens. And so she was quite chuffed about that. And we've been given quite a lot of information lately. Oh yes, I was going to say about what one of her missions that she had once was that she connected to the galactic cities. Now this is something actually that you might have talked about a few years ago in the Truth Seekers. I haven't heard about them lately, but a few years ago, everybody that was on Google, not Google, on YouTube and that, you would see images of these people who had taken pictures of galactic cities. Do you remember? Now, but we don't hear
in the clouds.
in the cloud.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we haven't heard about them lately, to be honest. But she connected, excuse me, to the galactics in one of these cities, and her job, her mission, should she have chosen to accept it, was to it was like a bubble machine. It wasn't a bubble, but that's the only thing she could say, explain it to me. And what they were doing, they were making the galactics, with her help, fifth dimensional orbs that were about that size, and they were full of the energy from that city, fifth dimensional energy. And what they were doing was they were sort of making these orbs full of this energy and sending it down to the earth. I mean, millions of them. And she was then shown people that were actually had connected to these orbs, that they'd sort of opened up and released their energy onto this general, and his heart was softened a little bit, you know. And since then, every day, we've been thanking the galactics for continuing to make them and sending them down to the earth. So that is the sort of thing. I won't go on to many others because, you know, we might not have the time. So that is one of the sort of things that we would be asked to do. I mean, some people, rather than missions, get knowledge and information. And lately, they've been giving us a lot of information about the ascension. And quite a few of the people have actually been taken to the time when we are on the new earth, and they could see how the emotion was amazing, and they could see the crafts there, the ships that are all millions and millions of them are up there now waiting, and they're all ready to come and help with our ascension. It's just so exciting. Now, one of the things that we were shown, one person was taken and went into the body of Noah, you know, Noah and the ark. And she thought, why am I in the body of Noah? And she looked down and could see that she got sort of hairy toes. Oh, we don't like that, she said. But she had become Noah, and then moved from there. And we got the information that when it's time for the earth to rebirth. Now this is, you know, there's a lot of people say that the earth is already, the new earth already exists. But what they were saying was, and this was like Ashtar as well, was saying that when it's time for the earth to birth, the earth is going to, we can't be here when it happens. So presumably all the stuff that's going to happen on the earth when she births this new earth could be quite difficult. It could be very seismic in a lot of ways, and that we wouldn't survive if we were here. And there have been a lot of people, huge people that you would know, like David Wilcox. He talks, doesn't he, about the flares. He's very into the flares. So maybe that's part of how the earth is going to rebirth.
Solar flash.
Solar flash, yeah. And what they said was that all the ships are going to be there to take everybody off planet so that the earth can rebirth. And that's why she was shown Noah, because the flood wasn't just local, it was all over the world. And so there would have been lots of groups of people, and it makes sense, doesn't it, that there were other groups of people that weren't bad people over the earth, that were taken up in the ships and who were then brought back down again when the flood dispersed. And that's why she was shown Noah, we believe. And so the ships will take us up. Now, I've always understood that to live on the new earth, we would need to have new bodies. And I expect many of you here know about that we're moving from carbon-based to crystalline-based. So that it's going to be more like a heavenly earth. So that we won't need to keep going up and down anymore. It's never going to happen again. And not only that, we will always remember who we are. The sum of who we are. We come here and we forget. We don't know who we are unless we really try and look into it and find out about it. And we will know the sum of who we are, and we will be able to live on this beautiful new earth. Now, I've always understood that we would go into some sort of pod of some sort for our bodies to be transformed into a fifth dimensional energy being that could live on the planet. And what they were saying was that we'd be taken up there, and we asked, how long would we be up there? They said, a twinkle of an eye. But of course, you know, it could be a few years, but to us it wouldn't seem very long. So,
excuse me, will we be conscious of this?
Yes, I believe so, yeah. I believe so. Now, the thing is, there's lots of bits, of course, that, you know, that I don't understand, like who are the ships going to take up? Are they going to take everybody up there? Because I don't think everybody would, there'd be a lot of fear. A lot of people wouldn't maybe want to go. But we would then be rejuvenated to be able to then, when the new Earth is birthed and ready for us all to come back down and live on this new planet. So that's, I just thought I'd pass that on because that is really interesting. It's just another thing for you to, as part of your truth seekers, to, you know, to understand. And I feel that there's possibly, you know, quite a lot of truth in that because we are given truth. I mean, one person a few weeks ago got was given the New Zealand. There's going to be an earthquake in New Zealand, turbulent waters, and of course 3 days later, because this was on a Monday, it happened on the Thursday, I think. It happened, you know. So we are given, we believe, truthful information from the higher realms. So that group, I've got some papers. Before you leave, if anybody's interested, I've got the a paper with the 3 different groups on, and it gives you a link to the Zoom if you decided you wanted to join in. Now, there's one that we've started a few months ago, which I felt was guided to do, is a remote viewing one. But remote viewing using hypnosis. So we can go anywhere in past, present and future. Do it using remote viewing techniques, but adding hypnosis to it, which makes it really exciting.
Can we find out what's happening with the McCann then?
Well, it's a good chance, yeah. So that's on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Right. And nothing. That's fortnightly. That's every fortnight. Yeah. And then the other one, which is my real passion, I suppose, is, well, everything is, but you know, particularly the soul rescue, because a lot of years ago, there was a lady that said to me, she was in a development group, and she said, I'd really like, when I've learned to develop these skills, I'd like to be able to find lost children. And I said to her, well look, you know, maybe we could, if you wanted to, you could hold something from a lost child and then go into hypnosis and maybe help to find it, you know. And she said, that would be a good idea. And so we spent 2 years doing. Now she wanted to find lost children who were alive, but the higher realms had other ideas. They, again, probably through contracts and things, I don't know, but they wanted us to find lost souls, not only children, but souls that had died and were trapped and lost or stuck on the earth plane. And
how does that happen?
it happens through, a lot of it through trauma, a lot of it through, sometimes they won't leave because they're waiting for family members. A lot of it is through fear. We've been doing it now, this is into our third year. And I know Maureen and Dawn, you were there for the very first one that we ever did.
Yeah,
and there was, and Dave, you were there as well. There were, and Sue, I think you might have been there as well. Yeah. And we had an amazing afternoon, didn't we? And we found out a bit about Madeleine McCann then. Do you remember Judith, the lady, Joan of Arc, who she had her pictures there one afternoon? Do you remember that? She had a picture that when Madeleine McCann had gone missing, she felt guided by spirit to paint a picture about Madeleine McCann. And she painted this like cave place, and wrapped in yellow cloth, which is exactly what you saw in the Soul Rescue, didn't you? So that sort of helped confirm that a little bit. That was interesting. So the Soul Rescue, Mary was always guided to, she was generally taken to the Second World War, and there was loads of ships and battles where the soldiers, sailors, had never returned to the light because they were trapped in a way where, especially under the water, we've discovered is a very, very difficult place for a soul. If you drown, like that lady I mentioned before, the Mexican man, in deep water, it's very hard to find the light when you've drowned because you are so panicky and so traumatized that so at the time she would open, the angels would open hundreds of portals at a time, and all these sailors, soldiers would go up. It's quite amazing. And then something happened, and she unfortunately lost her spirituality a little bit. A loved one died, and it really affected her, and she wouldn't do it anymore. So, but the one thing she said to me this one time, when she opened her eyes on this one session, and she said, if we sat here now and did this for the rest of our lives, did nothing else, we still wouldn't manage to get everybody. There are so many, many souls that are stuck and traumatised that need help. And so I always felt that we should do it. And so 3 years ago we started it, and we've done it ever since. And we've got hundreds and hundreds of records now of souls and their stories and their journeys and why they were stuck. From nearly every country of the world. And now I'm writing about that as well, because we record everything, and I've got well over 50 hours of tape to transcribe, which I'm busy doing. And it's really, again, it's so emotional. So if anybody feels drawn to doing it, it's not for everybody, but if you feel drawn to doing it, it would be wonderful. And that's on a Friday night at 7 o'clock. Okay? But don't worry if you've never done it before, because it might take a few sessions to really get into it and start connecting.
It's just the Zoom thing, it's complicated getting into it, isn't it? I don't think we've ever done Zoom before, have we?
No.
Have you,
It's not bad.
Is it not?
Actually, there's a link.
Is there?
It'll click, but you just need to download.
Oh,
Rhonda multitasks on Zoom.
She did, she normally cooks that tea when she's not out. Just put a
recording.
Yeah.
So, so on the bit of paper that I could give out if you were interested, it's got the Zoom link on there. All you have to do, once you've just gone on to Zoom, once you've got Zoom onto your laptop or phone or whatever, then it's just a matter of putting in the number,
right,
and it just comes up.
Another bash.
Give it a try, give it a try, because
the app.
Oh, you need, oh,
You
right.
need the app.
I'm not very sort of good at these things.
Yeah, Zoom US you need
Right.
to download
Okay.
onto the desktop, and then you would click on that and put the codes in.
Right,
But you
okay.
need the app first.
and you honestly, you would all be very, very welcome to any of those, because you would really be helping hugely with either the ascension or the soul rescue or the remote viewing, because we don't know yet what that's going to throw up. At the minute they're finding their feet and learning to do it. It's a bit of fun, but it's very, very interesting. Right, so I said we'd have a demonstration. So what we'll do now, this is something I want to mention. I was thinking about, we haven't got a great deal of time, so I was thinking that what we could do is do do some spiritual hypnotherapy. Now I haven't mentioned that this afternoon yet, and I did mean to, but of course, it's. But spiritual hypnotherapy is really where I'm at my most. I feel at home doing it, because when I first, I wanted to be able to get people to see and meet and greet loved ones that had passed. Basically, that was my initial idea. And I wanted to do it in such a way without having to go through a past life. Because you going into hypnosis, you can't really go into hypnosis and then go to heaven, But you can do it by having a past life, and then when you leave your body, going up to where you went to in the higher realms, which makes perfect sense. Some people have in the past done it the other way, where they've taken people into their birth, and then back up into the higher realms, and then into the life. But that's sort of a bit of a back to front way, I think. you know, we should do it the natural way, which is to have your past life, go up in the higher realms, then come back down and finish your life, go back up, you know. But it is quite time consuming, it's quite emotional. And I thought, for some people, they wouldn't want to go through a past life just to meet a loved one. So what we could do is try and make it so what I feel I was getting was, if you imagine we raise our vibration from where we are, say we're here, to say here. But the higher realms can then lower their vibration just enough to meet us in a midway place. So it's like a midway base where we meet. So we go up to here and they come down to here. And it's like a midway place. And they will create normally a beautiful place for you to meet in, where you can meet loved ones. I mean, I had a woman not so long ago who came, she was a nurse and she'd lost her mum about 6 months before, really desperately trying to get over it and couldn't. And it was suggested to her to come and try this, and she did, and for half an hour just left her for half an hour to be with her mum. Not only with her mum, but they'd created this house for her to be in, and lots of family members that had passed were all there and had a party, you know, which was lovely for her. So that happens as well with pets as well, you know. There's a lady from London that I see on Zoom now, which I couldn't have done a few years ago had this not happened to be honest. And she's a regular weekly client now, and she used to have a sanctuary in India, and moved back to this country after about 14 or so years having a sanctuary, and she was left with so many images and thoughts of what happened to the animals over there, how they were treated, that it's really terribly affecting her life. Now, the reason I mention her is because when I first wanted to do this, the very next day a lady came to me for a regression who was a medium, and I thought, well, I'm going to mention this to her, see what her guides think of it. So after the regression, I just said to her, I'm thinking about doing this spiritual hypnotherapy and taking people to this midway place. What are your guides' thoughts? And she said, my guide is telling me no. And I said, oh, why is that? And she said, because, she said, for many people actually, he is saying, yes, it would be great. It would be wonderful because it would be an opportunity for them to help release their grief. But he said for a lot of people, they wouldn't want to leave them. It would be very hard for them to leave them. So I respected that hugely. So for a couple of years, I never went anywhere near doing that. And then I kept getting these things saying to me, you know, you really should rethink this because it will help a lot of people. And so I put this together, and now I use it instead of clinical hypnotherapy, even when people come for all sorts of other issues. Because basically you are a soul in a physical body, and you are a spiritual being. So really, so much of it does depend on your spiritual self. And the higher realms, when we ask them for help, they do help. And so they will help with healing, they will help with all sorts of things that need to be done. They will help to release you from past life trauma by cutting cords and things. You don't have to go into hypnosis and cut cords. You can do that yourself even now. But it makes it more of an experience if you do it that way. Well, everyone, to me it's been an absolute delight to see everybody this afternoon and to share some of my journey with you. I really thank you for listening and watching. Those that took part, thank you for that. If anybody at any time, this is Dawn who's told me to say that. I'm available at the moment. I'm actually going to start doing some home sessions, and maybe I should have been doing them all along. Yes. But most people don't want to. They don't want to come in. In fact, one person, I couldn't believe it. The whole time they came, they would not take their mask off. So we're trying to do a regression with the mask on. And people speak when they go deep into it, they go
Speak
very,
quietly,
they speak very
yeah.
quiet, very softly. And of course it was an absolute nightmare. Oh my God, what's going on here? But anyway, it's been wonderful. Thank you very, very much. I won't keep you any longer.
That would have been ironic if they died in the Spanish flu.
Died in the
Keep your seats,
I must remember that one. That's a good one.
I'd just like
Keep your
to
seats.
thank Keith on behalf of the Truth Seekers for that, because that was a fantastic share that experience. And I'm sure everybody will welcome you back. So.
Oh, thank you.
I've got a little present for you. You know,
Oh no! Oh, one of your famous hats! Oh my God! Thank you! Oh, how wonderful!
and if you wouldn't mind, Jones from raffle tickets.